Okay, this is basically what we're talking about. Okay, these are the color studies you're going to have to do for this project. And before you watch the demo that I did, what I'd like to do is just kind of like give you a recap of what the demo is basically about. A lot of it's just about paint application. What you're going to be doing is taking your blue painter's tape and basically going over these sections of your illustration board, and you'll see that in the demo that I do, that is now a QuickTime movie on the internet. And then when you get all these done, you can just strip this off. So the scales are really kind of what I'm talking about in the demo. In particular, this scale here, which is probably the tough one to do, where you're starting off with a pure gray, just a black and white, but that black and white needs to match the same value as the color that you're working with. So just go ahead and put your pure color right out of the tube here, and then right here what you're going to need to do is mix up the gray that's the exact same value as this. So this is almost like a value number 5 if you had a value scale going from 1 to 10, and 10 being black. And then the rest I think are pretty self-explanatory, just a pure color going to white, pure color going to black, and a pure color going to the black.
Awesome. Okay, first of all, let's go ahead and talk paint. Some of you guys may want to get some colors that are not in the kit. If you do decide to do that, just let me kind of like run down. As far as the brands are concerned, what I would advise you to do if you go to Utrecht, just go ahead and get the Utrecht brand. It's actually a really good deal. Anyway, so if you do decide to get paint, you don't necessarily need the real deal. You could get away with the hue. There's a couple of colors that are really difficult to work with in your kit. The phthalo green, it's a very transparent color that's like very, very, very concentrated. And I'll kind of show you what I mean in a little bit once I kind of go through the paints. In terms of the brand, I'd say if you go to Dick Blick, just get the Dick Blick brand. It's a totally reasonable price. I would stay away from the Van Gogh or Van Gogh, however you want to pronounce it. It's kind of crappy. Pro art is garbage. There's nothing pro about it. Liquitex is nice, but it's been kind of taken over by Golden. If you guys like been to Utrecht or any kind of like art supply store, you'll notice that like the acrylics are like almost dominated by Golden now. They've kind of replaced Liquitex. This used to be like, the shit in the paint world, and now Golden's kind of like taken over and made a big impact there.
Very good.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to project the diagram of the scales that you need to do. What I'd like to do today, because it's probably the hardest scale to do, is to do the tone scale. And tone is when you add gray to a color. What I'm going to ask you to do is to start off with a pure color, and then basically mix up a gray that's the exact same value as that color, and then gradually add it to that color. So you're changing the intensity of the color, but you're not changing the value of the color, which is by far probably the most confusing scale. And I don't have it projected in front of me. I think it's like 10 squares I want you to do. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Now let's go ahead and I'll do it right here. I'm just going to kind of like eyeball it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. I'm going to go ahead and do this with the cadmium red. And in terms of rinse containers, what I would advise you to do, let me show you what not to do first of all. Students will go with a rinse container like this. They'll fill it all the way up, like they're getting a glass of water. And then when they come to rinse out their brushes, they're submerging like half the brush in the water. And then they start to paint, and then slowly this kind of drips down and it makes a big mess. So what I would advise you to do, and it's going to mean more trips to the rinse room, is just go ahead and maybe like fill it up to here. It makes it a lot easier. And if you have room, which you don't necessarily have room here, what I would advise you to do is just, what was I going to say? Oh, have 2 rinse containers, so one that's like totally clean, one that's for like dirty washing or whatever. And I tend to always have like a paper towel, or in this case like a rag with me. I used to do paper towels a lot, but I'm trying to save on money because I guess the paper towel is way too much. In terms of the palette, I tend to use aluminum foil. You can get a palette like this, but this requires washing, and as you can tell, I'm a slob. I really don't want to do that. tempted to put it in the dishwasher, but I don't think that would work. This works awesome for thick application of paint. When you're doing washes, you're probably going to want something like this, or you're going to have like 101 little styrofoam cups that you can do little washes with. And a wash is basically when you add water to the paint. So I'm going to go ahead and do the red. Before I do that, though, I want to show you one thing that you can do with the GAC. And I'm not going to require it for this, but if you have it, you may want to kind of like play around with it. When you're painting directly on the tape, and it kind of goes over from the tape to the paper, sometimes it can like seep underneath. And what you can do is you can use the GAC 100. And you can basically seal the edge. And this does kind of take a while to do, so I'll just do it on like one little small section. Just a little bit. So it gets on a little bit on the tape and a little bit on the illustration board. You don't need that much at all. That way you'll get like a super crisp edge. Okay. So that's my pure color, highest saturation you can get. And I've got my black. And in terms of brushes, I prefer working with kind of like a medium-sized brush, like something like this, or possibly something like this. In your kit, what you tend to have is little small brushes like this, and all of a sudden like a huge one. You don't really have an in-between, so I would advise you to get something like this, not necessarily just for this class, but down the road when you're taking a painting class. It's just going to drive you crazy having like the two extremes there. And I tend to work with a white synthetic. This is the Dick Blick Scholastic Wonder White. It seems to work really nice. And I would also advise you to add a little bit of water to your paint, just a little bit. And lots of times what I'll do to keep it dry is I'll have like a little mister. So instead of actually going there and dripping a little bit of a drop on there, let's go ahead and like mist it a little bit. And it keeps it nice and wet.